Amy Hardison, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Nicholas.
So, Amy, you participated in our case study where we measured your blood before and after taking Novo's products for 6 months. Your results were stellar. Your pace of aging, which is the gold standard in measuring how fast or how slow you age, yours started at 0.86, and after the 6 month case study lowered to 0.74, which means at that rate, in 10 years, your body would have only aged about 7.4 years, which is a massive reduction in pace of aging and one of the best results I've seen. So it's no wonder that you qualified for that Rejuvenation Olympics leaderboard. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So was this your first time following a longevity specific regimen?
Absolutely. And I have to say it was kind of funny because when I got up on the leaderboard, I looked at that and I thought, oh, maybe that's because I wasn't so good to start with. You know, they had a lot of room for improvement. And I didn't even think much about it. And then I got a few phone calls from people I know across the world. And one of our friends in India, and he's like, is this you? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I guess it's me. And I talked to my daughter, Lil, who was also part of the study. And she goes, Mom, I don't know if you know this, but this is kind of a big deal. And these people that are around you, like Brian Johnson, like they put a lot of money in to make these kind of improvements in their health. And I thought, oh, okay. I mean, it didn't even dawn on me for a long time that this was kind of a big deal. So that is kind of fun. But I do believe that because I am not, you know, the typical person that's into longevity who's searching all of these things out, that I do make a good blind study.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's amazing to see real people like you scoring as well, if not better, than other individuals like Brian Johnson or Ben Greenfield, who might have, hundreds of thousands of dollars at their disposal and a team of doctors helping them. I think it's really encouraging to the rest of us to see, results like yours. So I'm kind of curious about your background. Before starting the longevity regimen with Novos, what did your lifestyle look like? Were you always generally health conscious? I see lots of books behind you, so obviously you have.
We're frozen again.
Oh, no worries. We'll pause. So it's all
Okay.
good. So I was curious. So tell me more about your background. Before starting this longevity regimen with Novos, what did your lifestyle look like? Were you always generally health conscious?
Before Novus, I feel like I've been focused on healthy living like my whole life. And I have to say, probably as a teenager, I even just started as a way to make sure I maintained a healthy weight. And I've never been overweight, but I have always had to watch my weight. But after 10 years or so like into my late 20s, it's like, no, I eat this way because it tastes good. It feels good to eat healthy food. And I've exercised as an adult, like even starting in high school, every day. So I have for years and years and years done aerobic exercise for an hour a day. I swim for an hour a day in the summer. In the winter, I work out on an elliptical. I have stretches that I do. We eat from the 4 food groups, a balanced diet with we eat at home most of the time. We don't go out to eat very much because we like my food better than most restaurant food, and I just feel like it's healthier. And we have more control over things that aren't as healthy that get in, like seed oils and different stuff like that. So I feel like I have been really healthy and have really been focused on healthiness. I've never smoked. I don't drink, never drank. And I think exercise, when you go to the doctor, you get, those are like the very first questions. Do you smoke? Do you drink? And then they look at your weight, which is reflected with the exercise. And I think once you get through those first 3 little hurdles, they're like, okay, we've eliminated the big things. So I feel like by nature, I have been really healthy oriented. But I also feel like I have lived long enough that I've seen what's healthy go in and out. So in one decade, I have noticed that it's like, okay, you want to eat complex carbs, and that's a really good diet. And then the next decade, they're like, no, don't eat complex carbs, eat just meat. And the next decade, something else. And it's like, no, don't eat bacon, don't eat this. And I just watch it change. And I've watched it change enough that, like, where my daughter is always on the cutting edge of what's coming out, I'm a little slow to look at what's the newest thing coming, because I just kind of roll with it and think, find what works for you and do it. And for me, a healthy, balanced diet with foods from all the 4 food groups and exercise. And I'm a huge believer in moderation. So to eat moderately is really big for me. I watch my parents do that, where, at the end of their lives, they're like having their dinner and it's like a half of a tuna sandwich that they share between them. But I think that it's just this, I think we overeat in America. So that eating in moderation is really helpful. So all of those things I would consider healthy, but I realize sometimes the people coming up in the new generation with the newest and latest, they may say, no, that's not healthy. You shouldn't be drinking milk, or you shouldn't be eating whole wheat bread. But I think it's healthy.
Talk to me about mental stimulation and cognitive health.
For me, I love to learn. I absolutely love to learn, and I love to have my mind engaged in rigorous learning. And I find it stimulating, exciting. It's my passion. It's what I do as a discipline every day, but it's also what I do because I love it. So I watched my mother have a long, slow decline with dementia, and she kind of took, like the slow slide of over 10, 15 years. And the scary part about that is she was really physically active, and sorry, sometimes I need some water. So
It's okay.
this was purely genetic. She was active and engaged in life, and I watched her where she's climbing Camelback Mountain in her 80s. So being active was a role model she set, and yet in spite of all that, she dealt with dementia. My father, and she passed when she was 90. My father did really well mentally until he was 90, and then he had a stroke. And then the last 4 years, his cognitive skills went down because he had several little strokes. So they ended up passing away just 6 days apart from each other. But we watched them and helped take care of them in those later years. And it's interesting, there's 6 kids in our family that we all said by the end of that, we're like, we don't want to go through that. So I look at this longevity ideas, the rejuvenation, Olympics and all that, and I'm thinking, I'm a little out of step here because I don't want to extend my life into my hundreds. 84, 85, that's plenty for me. But what I do want is I want the quality of my life to be good. And I want my mind to be as sharp as possible. And I know there's sometimes a genetic component that you can't do anything with, but I want to do the things that I can do. And so for me to have my mind engaged, I love to study, I love to learn, I do puzzles, and I think all of that's good. When my parents started struggling with their dementia, and we went to a class at the hospital, they said to us that there's only one thing that they absolutely know for sure that can help forestall the dementia, and that is exercise. And I love that because I already exercise. And then when my oldest brother, started dealing with it and he went to some of the classes, they told him that 60 minutes of aerobics is really important for 6 days a week. And I don't think you need to do that much for other things for total health. But if you want to fight dementia, that's kind of the target they want you at. So anytime I'm like 40 or 50 minutes into my workout and think, maybe I'll stop 10 minutes early today, or mostly because I'm running out of time, not because I want to stop. And then I think, no, I got to get that 60 minutes. I don't want to deal with this dementia thing. But I am aware that there are genetics that are at play, but I want to do what I can do.
I love that. So then during the past year or so, since you have been following the Novos longevity regimen, what lifestyle changes did you have to make besides taking the Novos supplements? Anything else different now in terms of your lifestyle than before?
I didn't do anything different. Not at all. And I do have to say that while we eat really healthy, I think we eat healthy. Um, that doesn't mean I don't throw in a sweet chocolate after lunch and one after dinner, because I also think that life has to be it's got to be worth living. You got to have some fun, but I believe in moderation in that. So I think that's an important aspect of it also, though. It's like if you were so rigorous into the health that there's no joy in what you eat, then it's like, no, I think that's missing the boat too.
What about any notable changes to your body, mind, appearance, etc., that have happened since beginning your longevity regimen?
I have not really noticed anything because, like I said, I've been exercising, for an hour a day for 50 years, and I've been eating healthy for 50 years. So there's not a huge change, but we did the blood work before, and we did it in the middle, and we did it at the end. And to me, the difference that showed up in my blood work was convincing, and it was significant, and it was surprising. But to me, it's like that is measurable data. That is something that it's like, okay, maybe I'm not that much into vitamins or supplements for a variety of reasons. But when I look at that, it's like, this is something to pay attention to. This is something to say, okay, you need to rethink your attitude about supplements because this is hard data. But I do
In
have to
general,
say, I really, really appreciate that the pills are little and tiny because I hate taking big horse pills. And I really appreciate that the powder that makes the drink that's part of the boost or the supplement is delicious. So some things you take because they're good for you. And I do take calcium because I have osteopenia, and I take some stuff for my eyes. And sometimes you do it out of discipline. But it's like, Novos has created a nice product that makes it delightful to take versus like, ugh, I got to swallow this huge pill.
thank you for that. I'm curious, what was the attitude that you had typically towards vitamins and supplements previously?
I just kind of thought you just kind of pee them out is where I had kind of come from, and that's probably old technology. But my husband's mother was always huge into supernatural things and taking all of these supplements, and it I questioned the efficacy as she died, like in her 60s, like at 66, and didn't have great health. And um, I have just always felt like it's far better to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables and healthy food and get your nutrients out of the real food. Um, so that's where I came from. But I have signed up to take the Novo supplements, and it's a continuing, ongoing thing because I look at what my results are, and it's like, that's convincing. That's solid.
Now, you mentioned a desire not to extend lifespan, but more to live into your 80s and 90s with a good quality of life. What does quality of life look like? As in, ultimately, what does longevity mean to you?
Well, the quality of life in terms of longevity, for me, the ideal would be that you're mentally sharp until you pass and that you can live independently, and that life is joyful. Now, I know that that doesn't come from the physical part, but you don't have the kind of pain that would um, interrupt the joy that you bring to life, that would make it so you have to work a little bit harder just because you hurt. And so that would be ideal. That would be wonderful. But I also think that our bodies are set up to eventually die. We're not supposed to be here forever. And so there are things that you will have to deal with regardless of what you do to take care of your body. And so there's a natural process. So I also don't want to resist that too much. I have different, we call them I am statements or affirmations or whatever you want to call them. But one of the things that I say to myself each day is I embrace the adventure of aging, because I want to have it. It's an amazing, wonderful time. And again, I watch my parents, who are my role models for life, and they just would always say, this is the best time of our life. And we are so blessed. And I would look at them and think, man, Mom, you can't remember anything. And this doesn't look like you're so blessed. But that's how they lived. And that's how I want to live. I want to live so that no matter what happens physically, I'm just like, this is a wonderful life. What a privilege to have each day. And I will share a brief story with you. Is when my mom, it was like probably within the year that she had passed. And at this point, she had been in dementia for a long time. And I took her to her neurologist, and she said, let me ask you some questions. And so he said, what city do you live in? And she said, the right city. And he said, what county do you live in? And then she started kind of getting some of the answers mixed up with where she had lived earlier in her life. And he asked her what season it was, and she said the hot one. And since we're in Arizona, it's like, that's a safe bet. That one counts all year round. And, he asked a few more questions, and then he said, excuse me, I'll be back in a minute. And he left the room, and my mom turned to me, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I didn't do very well, did I? And I told her she did just fine. But when the doctor came back, he gave her a piece of paper and a pencil, and he said, will you write a sentence, please? And she wrote, I have a wonderful life. And to me, having fulfilling, wonderful longevity is a combination of what you have physically. It's a combination of the attitude that you bring to life. It's a little bit easier if your health is good, if you're not in pain. But like I said, there's going to be a point that's probably going to enter in. So I want to be that it's a habit for me to see life as wonderful, so that when it gets to the point where you're working through a few more challenges, it's like, no, I get it. Life is wonderful. It has been, and it's wonderful even as we start to eventually physically decline.
It's beautiful. I want to see if there's one more question here where, we actually ask this on our website. So on our website, novuslabs.com, we have a free longevity quiz that gives you a score of how well your lifestyle is optimized for longevity. I'd love to ask you the first question of that quiz. It has to do with your personal motivation, reasonings for wanting to slow down aging. And I'll read you the question as well as the answer choices, okay?
Okay.
So the question is, what would be most important to you if you slowed down your aging? And there's 5 options. First option, having more energy, living as long as possible, having a younger appearance, preventing or healing diseases, or having optimal cognition.
Having optimal cognition.
That makes
And
sense.
that's because of what I saw. And I've done the 23andMe, and I was thrilled when I only had one gene for the APO4 or APOE4, whatever it is, because I know I could have gotten 2. And I am thrilled with that. I have struggled for the last couple of years with migraine headaches, and so every now and again I guess twice I've gotten MRIs. And when my neurologist said that my hippocampus was very large and healthy, I was so excited. Um, because to me, if I'm getting older, I don't need to look young. It's like, you know what? I've lived these years. I don't need to look like I'm 40 when I'm 70. It's like I'm proud of these years, and I don't need to live a lot longer. And I don't remember right now what were the other things that you said, but when you get to cognition, I'm like, oh, that is important to me. And yet, my brother is 10 years older than I am, and he has been dealing with dementia for a few years, and that seems too young to me to be dealing with dementia, but it is what it is. And he would have been mentally active. He was an attorney and well educated. Um, but both my brother and my parents, they are very happy. And there are some gifts that when you are looking at it in the future, or you're a caregiver for people that you love that have dementia, it looks horrible. It's like this is just a shell of the person that I know and love. But I think there's some grace in the person that's there. They don't have the awareness. And so I am open. If that ends up being my path, I just plan on saying this life is a wonderful experience, and how exciting. Maybe not as exciting for the people that take care of me, but I'm open that whatever it is going to be wonderful. And I'll do what I can to be mentally healthy and physically healthy.
Anything else you'd like to share about your longevity journey thus far?
Just like I said, that I am probably atypical. And I do think it's interesting that my perspective comes from someone where the older years are maybe closer, than someone who's 40, someone who's 50 even. It's like my husband and I, we have the awareness that we are getting older. You see it in the mirror every day at this stage, but it's a good thing. It's a good stage. But I think having it be closer, my expectations may be different. They I'm not saying that the other people's aren't grounded in reality, but mine are grounded in some very practical things, knowing that, that's my next 10, 20 years, and that I'm on that front edge of those front 20 years, not like I have 20 years before I get to the front edge. And so I am looking for very practical benefits of taking care of myself. But I also think that when you've taken care of yourself, both with exercise and healthy eating for 40, 50 years, it's also satisfying in and of itself. It just feels good. It feels good to exercise. It feels good to eat right. It feels good. It feels responsible to take care of our bodies to the degree that we can.
Amy, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for all your help along the way and for the amazing product. I have been so thrilled to have these results. Yeah, it's been great.